We're continuing with the cat image here, the cat in the bucket. And last week we did some studies on cat anatomy just to learn the basic shapes. And so we did some sketches and some observing in graphite, most of us. And so now if we go into color this week, we should be more familiar with the shapes and be able to get them much more quickly. Even so, my preferred way of working is to begin with a graphite sketch, very light. I can't stress that enough because I'm going to erase much of this and leave just a ghosted image so that I can work from it. But I do need some guide as to the edges of where I'm going. And we use all the skills that we've talked about here up to now in terms of angles. See his little head here. This is a pretty much vertical angle. Then it cuts and goes in this direction. So there's all kinds of angles, and particularly the leg. There's a number of angles in here that, if captured, really give the attitude of that little paw hanging over. So all of those things apply. Basic proportions. I checked the width, and the width of this bucket with the cat in it is about the same distance as from the top of the bucket to the bottom of the bucket. So that shape is pretty much a square, except that this, of course, these angles come in to form the base. And then in terms of proportion of the rest of the cat there, he's about 3/4 of that bucket. So those are some of the observational tools that I used in order to get this very basic graphite outline. And again, as you see, I just did the basic shapes. I didn't do any of the detail. Got the basic outline of the eyes there, and mostly the angles. So now I'm going to erase much of this graphite, but leave just enough that I can use as a guide. And so when I go to color, I'll have a guide to work from, but the graphite, most of the graphite is being removed from the surface here. So it won't mix with the graphite. I'm sorry, it won't mix with the colored pencil pigments. But more importantly, much of these edges are very, they sort of come and go. Even the bucket, which bucket, of course, is a hard edge, but the way the light hits this, you don't see a hard edge. You see dark areas in certain places, but leaving them open will give the suggestion of light. And particularly the cat, the fur is a very jagged edge. It's not a hard line. So I don't want to begin a drawing with a hard line that I then cannot get rid of. Now, if I were going to, when I start the color, which I seem to have, oh, here we go. I would begin with, now if I was using the Prismacolor sticks, they're very handy because I can get large foundations of color, for instance in the bucket, down, and I can define those big color shapes quickly. Now this is very similar to doing a color wash with watercolor, just to get the big color shapes down. But it's possible to do that with the colored pencil as well. For this particular process, I would use the side so that I'm not getting these kinds of marks, because that's not the look that I want. So I would use the side to get that tone in there, and I do marks that are close together. I'm not going real slowly, but I'm taking my time enough to get a broad area of color down there. So my goal here is to just get the basic local colors down. Again, if I was using the Prismacolor sticks, I would go in and just do the basic color on the cat, leaving his little paw here because that's white, just to get those big shapes down. And if they're a little uneven and you get these strange marks, you can always do it this way as well. But again, if I was using the Prismacolor pencils, I would use the side. I think the other drawing I did, I started with yellow and held off on the brown for a while. And this way, I'm keeping this edge very open to getting these little furry marks. I would leave the detail of the eyes. I have them placed, and the muzzle and the nose till the end. And one reason is because as I'm working, if I notice that they are not placed properly, and I might notice that as I'm working, I can adjust them later. Whereas if I go right for the detail right now, and get to the bigger shapes and find out those features are misplaced, then I'm kind of stuck with them, kind of have to live with them. And then when I'm ready for detail, this is when I started earlier, then again, I can either go in with the Prisma sticks and using the small edge here, I'm doing a horizontal stroke here so that I get these little furry marks out there along the edge. And then as I get more and more detail in there, I can go in with the darker colors to get the fur. And I'm using these shapes, I'm observing these stripes on the cat and not thinking of them as stripes so much as indications of contour of the form. For instance, his little paw here it's a cylinder, like our arms are cylinders. And so the shape of that stripe comes up and over and down, and that's what it's a great assistance in showing us the curvature of his little paw there, or his little arm. So I would use that feature to achieve that. Now, I don't have a brown pencil for some reason, but you can achieve, brown is nothing more than red, yellow, and blue. The primary colors make brown. Of course, the type of blue and the type of yellow and the type of red you have dictate what kind of brown you're going to get, a reddish brown or a bluish brown. But you can get quite dark with the primary colors if you don't have just exactly the brown that you want. And you know, if the kitty cat's coloring is not exactly what this is, it wouldn't really matter. And so I would just continue until I got as much detail in as I wanted to. And then go in and finish the bucket in much the same way. For instance, if I wanted to get that nice darkened, it's like a little raised area on the bucket, go in and indicate that. And then there's the light is hitting, this is an undulating sort of form, so I'd leave that part light and go on up here and get the tone in there, which is what gives that bucket its sort of rippled effect there. Anyway, I would continue on and do as much detail as I felt was necessary, leaving open the possibility that, once again, sometimes less is more. I might not put a lot of color all the way around that bucket. I might just make sure I define some of these nice edges that have very defined darker areas. And what isn't stated in color allows the eye to see how light plays across the bucket and might be enough. I would try, I think, ever so cautiously to get this little slight shadow in here, because that's what really gives his paw the look that it's hanging out over the bucket.